Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee. I'm joined by the Vice Mayor Pastor and former Vice Mayor Gallego. I'm really out of the loop. So, first is minutes of the meeting of May 9th. Do I have any corrections, amendments, or a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second. Motion second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Consent items 2 through 9, and I believe you would like to make a comment on item 3.
Yes, so item 3 is on our agreements with Maricopa County Flood Control, and that continues to be a priority for, I think, the entire city, but definitely something very much on our mind in District 8. There continues to not be enough flood funding to do many important projects, and we are working very hard to try to change it. So this week, I'm sending a letter to Maricopa County asking them to move towards historic funding levels for flood control, to go back where we were even when we were at higher funding levels. There was still great need. So we're moving forward with 3 very important projects. There are no projects on this list in the South Mountain area, and I just want my constituents to know we very much are working to try to find funding, particularly the 27th Avenue and Dobbins project is a high priority, and we will continue to be vigilant. So with that, I will move approval of items 2 through 9.
Have a second?
Second.
Pardon me. On the consent agenda, we have a motion to approve and a second from items 3 through 9. Do you have any comments or? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Takes us to the information items 10 through 14. Does anyone have any questions or would like to pull this for? Hearing none, we will go to item 15. The 2050 maintenance of pavement for arterial and major collector streets.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, since the adoption of Proposition 104, the Streets Department has been working with the City Council, with this subcommittee, with our Citizens Transportation Commission to move forward with the maintenance of our roads citywide and making sure that those get the pavement treatment that are so needed. And so this item here today is to talk about adding to the years in the plan for the maintenance of arterial and major collector streets using T2050 funds. And here to talk about this is Ray Dovalina, our Street Transportation Director, along with Mark Glock, Deputy Street Transportation Director, and Ryan Stevens, Civil Engineer. So with that, I will turn it over to Ray for the presentation.
Thank you, Mario. Madam Chair and committee members, thanks for the opportunity. We're very excited to introduce you to this continuing program that we're developing. As you probably recall, we've already done the last 2 years, and we're moving forward with 17 and 18, and we're showing you basically, I'm sorry, 18 and 19, and we're showing you 20 and 21, fiscal years 20 and 21. We're progressing to getting a 5-year program, so in the fall we're going to be coming in to talk to you about 2022, and so we're progressing to that and making sure that we have more information out there, not only to the public, but also all the companies, private companies that do work in our streets, so they have a better understanding of what we have coming up in the next couple of years. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mark to begin the presentation.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. You have heard our wares for how we collect our information for our public or our pavement management system. What I will do is I will briefly go over our process, and then Ryan, who manages our program, will give you the information on the 2021 program, our long-awaited 5-year program, which we're finalizing. So with the pavement management system, we have a specialized piece of equipment, high-tech van that will drive all the city streets once every 2 years. And what we do is we capture the streets and the conditions of the streets, and then we're able to prioritize how those streets are going to get programmed into our program. So the the 4,800 plus miles of city streets that we have are broken up into majors and arterials, collectors, and residential streets. And the different funding sources associated with the different locations. Now, up until just recently, the T2050, we didn't have that luxury, so all we had were AHR, so we had a lot fewer streets that we're able to do. So with the T2050, it's really helping our program. So with the breakout of the different streets that we have, the different types of surface treatments are listed on this graph, associated with the cost for each one of those treatments. As you can see, the overlay, which everybody loves, a brand new street, that costs a lot more than once we get down into the, say, the TRMSS. That's an oil type of treatment that preserves the surface of the street, helps mitigate oxidation of the streets, and gives us a little bit longer lifespan of our street. So you can see the wide range of dollars or costs that are associated with the different treatments that we have. Now, on the far right-hand side, you can see that how we kind of capture these is if we have a street that's in really bad condition or fair condition, that's when we get into the overlay. That's where the roads are really cracked up, falling apart, and we will go through and mill and overlay those. So with that information that we have, we'll go through and we will capture the different streets, and we categorize them into the areas of needing the most attention. And we also look at the different council districts and try to make sure that we have our program spread out throughout the valley to where we have an even coverage of the roads. There are some areas of town that, of course, are a little bit newer, and we get questions quite a bit as far as when we're going to be in to do those roads. But what we try to do is capture the roads that are in fair to poor condition at best. And then Ryan has done a real good job on being able to use the other tools in our toolbox to be able to help keep our roads together till we get to that overlay program. So with that, I'll turn this over to Ryan and let him present the upcoming 2021 program.
Thank you, Mark. So we're here today to present our fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021 program, the details of which are in your packet in terms of which treatments are being used, which are funded by T2050 and which are funded by AHR. In addition, tagging on to Mark's comments on how we identify streets, we also run, once we get our recommendations and our field checks, we run through a conflict review process with our city departments and outside utilities to make sure we are adjusting our schedule in a way that they're able to do their work before we come in to try to minimize cuts to the pavement. We are also working on an interactive WebGIS map for our utility partners so that they can see the entire 5-year program at once and schedule their work accordingly. So again, the details of the program are in your packet. The T2050 funded program was approved by the Citizens Transportation Commission. And so we are here today to ask your approval to send to full council the fiscal year 2020 and 2021 pavement maintenance programs. And we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Comments? Councilwoman?
Thank you. So we, I think, are getting great feedback from the community that they're excited to see all the pavement programs we've already been doing, although everyone wants their particular part of Phoenix to be first. We do get some questions about streets where maybe we don't need to redo the entire street, but there's hot spots for potholes and people are getting flat tires. So how does the pavement maintenance ban, if it's just, one isolated spot, we don't need to redo the whole street, but how do we do the smaller spot treatments as part of this program?
Yeah. Madam Chair, committee members, the way that we capture for just say for the potholes, we have our field crews. We have our staff that will go out and address the potholes and any smaller patch areas that need to be completed. What the pavement management system does is it captures an entire area and it records that and averages that entire area to be able to be shown for comparison against other sections. So for the interim types of maintenance, our field staff that we have throughout our 4 service centers will go out and do those repairs. But for the pavement management system, we will capture the information for the entire area, either the mile sections that we do for the majors and collectors, or for the residentials, we do quarter sections. We can capture that entire area, and then we analyze it in comparative to the other areas.
And then the agenda item 14, report on Dobbins Road, mentioned that because of its classification, it would be an AHR-funded project. What is the cycle at which AHR-funded projects are getting repaved? How often, do we know? I know we have great news on T 2050, and they're, I think, 3 times as quickly now being repaved.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman, the cycle on AHR funded programs, we are working towards getting to a similar 10-year cycle. It's not quite there yet, but we're always looking at avenues of looking for more funding, and the projections of what we're doing in any given year are based off of some assumptions, and we always look for, do we have cost savings in projects that we can either accelerate, or do we need to adjust our assumptions? So, but it's getting close to a 12-year cycle approximately at this time.
And Madam Chair, just to add to that, what Ryan is stating is that we're trying to have a certain treatment depending on the type of the analyzed treatment of what we need to do for those streets. So if it's a new street that got just built, it'll have a certain treatment within those 10 years or 12 years. So ultimately, we're going to have some type of treatment dealing with that road, depending on the age, the wear and tear, and the history of that pavement. So ultimately, we're going to have some type of treatment out there.
That's actually much better than I thought the number would be. That's
Just to add, previously to our T 2050, we were looking at a very longer time frame. As you probably remember, we were talking about a 65-year time frame, and we're trying to get down with that 10-year treatment of some type of treatment, getting down to a 35-year realm, and trying to make sure that we have a better consistency on all across all of the streets that we have.
dramatic improvement. Yeah, people used to make jokes about being eligible for retirement before
Yeah.
street repavement. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
I want to piggyback on the comment about the potholes. So I understand that the pavement maintenance is in a very holistic way, and we look at sections and how we go about paving it, and then the where it is on the schedule. What happens, or where do people call regarding the potholes? Because I can tell you right now, on the 7s, especially on 7th Avenue, there's a huge pothole, and that's a major street that we use, and I have seen it 3 times now this past weekend where people don't see it, and they go deep, and then they hit the curb. So I'm just want to know where people can report these situations so that then somebody could go out and analyze it.
Madam Chair and Vice Mayor, first of all, the number is basically, it's a dispatch number that we have for street maintenance. It's 602-262-6441.
Yes.
That's our general number, and that also is after hours. So if there's any calls after 5 p.m., you can still get a person that's going to give us information, and we have after hours staff. So that's the first question. The second question is, I'll have Mark kind of talk about, if there's a repeated instances where we have a certain area that we have an issue, how we tackle that. So it's more potholes or than one pothole.
Right, so, Madam Chair, Vice Mayor. So with our field staff is the ones that will go out and repair the potholes. Now, with the number that Ray had just given, we have rapid responders. We have 3 throughout the valley, and once we get the call that comes in, our dispatch will get that information right out to our rapid responders, and within no more than 24 hours, we will be out and have those potholes repaired. We rely a lot on the public for their input. More eyes, the better. But we do have staff we have many crews that are out and about, and we see different areas. But if we get the calls, we truly appreciate those, and we're able to get out to repair them. Now, if we do have an area that we have repeated complaints about, what we'll do is we'll send out a larger piece of equipment, Miller little overlay machine, and then we will actually pave that area. We've done quite a bit of that up on just recently Thunderbird Road, 35th Avenue area. We had a lot of areas where the asphalt was peeling up just on small areas. It wasn't depth, but it was rough and rocky. So we had crews go out and do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move approval?
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Complete streets. I believe you get to continue, Ray.
Next one, yeah. Madam Chair and committee members, thank you for this opportunity. We're very excited to bring this topic. We've been working with our Complete Streets Advisory Board for the last 2 years, and here with us we have Mark Milenchenko, our Deputy Director over Transportation Planning and Programming, and also a member of our Complete Streets Advisory Board, Sylvia Urieta, here also to join us. So with that, I'll have Mark start it off with the presentation.
Thank you very much. Good morning. The Complete Streets program, the primary goal of Complete Streets is to make our streets more usable to all modes of transportation. Walking, biking, connections to transit. It's very important to move this ahead. It also provides the groundwork or the background for the Complete Streets program. We have a couple of ordinances in place. We had ordinances passed for the guiding principles as well as the setting up of the Complete Streets Advisory Board. The next step here today is the Complete Streets policy. And what the policy includes, and hopefully you've had in your packet the policy, and the policy includes a number of things. First, it lays the ground or the vision for Complete Streets for the city of Phoenix. And then also it sets the number of goals in dealing with the other stakeholders, the developers, the other city departments, and the community. And it also outlines the roles and responsibilities for staff, for streets, and for also the planning department. And it also lists the exceptions to Complete Streets, which are very minor. Thus far, we have, as I said, we have the guiding principles through our existing ordinance, the policy. The next steps, as we show here, are the design guidelines as well as the performance measures. The guidelines, when we move into that next phase, that is, we have a consultant we're going to be advertising for assistance. We have our existing street design guidelines. We want to incorporate Complete Streets design elements into that. But also the next step, as part of those design guidelines, we will ask for potential revisions to our city code. And that's kind of where the rubber hits the road and where we ask for requirements in terms of development. In talking with Chair Williams this past week, there was an item, and we really want to stress that. We have a number of distinct areas in the city, and so being very context sensitive to the surrounding area is very important. Also, when we talk about Complete Streets, many people envision a fully designed, reestablished corridor. Many times when we talk about Complete Streets, we want to add another safe crossing. We want ADA improvements. We want better connections to area transit. So they can be select elements added to a corridor. thus far, the policy has gone through the Environmental Quality Commission, the Development Advisory Board, both technical and legal staff from the city, and then it was adopted by the Complete Streets Advisory Board, and then the Planning Commission. When we initially went to the Planning Commission, they told us that they would like us to go back to the development community and meet with them and refine the policy so that all the stakeholders are on board. And so when we went back to the Planning Commission the second time, the policy passed unanimously, but they also stated that we continue our work with the development community and other stakeholders. What I'd like to do now is pass the baton over to Sylvia to talk about the collaborative process that the Complete Streets Board went through.
Good morning. My name is Sylvia Urusha, and I've been part of the community Complete Streets Advisory Board. It has been a comprehensive outreach to a lot of the community groups. We have made presentations. We have invited members of the community to come to our meetings and give us their concerns, give us their input as we moved along with every step of the new policy and as we started drafting guidelines. I think it has been a great partnership with all these community groups. They have been very active and they have come to most of our meetings. We have quite a few members of the community that come over, and they really have provided a lot of information on the different corridors throughout the city so that we are well aware what the impact would be in an old neighborhood as well as a new developing area, as well as downtown. So we have had really good input. We will continue to do that. We continue to do outreach to organizations so that they understand why we're doing this, how the city is proposing to look at its investments in the right of ways and how we can all do a much better work in being inclusive, and as we redevelop the city, how we look to the future to make sure that our future is an inclusive partnership with our community. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Continue the presentation.
When we speak of complete streets, it's not in its own silo. What we try to do is, from the city's perspective, we have a number of initiatives that have gone through the process. We just had an update on the T2050 in terms of streets. Just to provide an example of how we're trying to maximize our resources and to link our efforts, we have a future project on Van Buren from 7th to 24th Street. We also have a Choice Neighborhoods grant planning process at 16th Street in Van Buren, and we've been linking our efforts together there, but also aligning that area is a T2050 mobility project assessment area, where we look at connectivity to transit, additional sidewalks that are needed, other improvements, ADA and bicycle facilities. So our efforts are linked together. It's not just the Complete Streets program, it's a tying of Reinvent Phoenix, the general plan, T2050, the bicycle master plan, all linked together. And so with that, staff is requesting that the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee and City Council, or recommend that to City Council approval of the Complete Streets policy.
We have some cards. If you don't mind, I'll call them first before we do questions. Ramondo Cabrera. I'm probably just screwed that. Raimundo? Sorry.
Madam Chair, members of the council, thank you. My name is Raimundo Cabrera. I live at 1102 West Portland Street. I'm actually a member of the Complete Streets Advisory Board appointed by Vice Mayor Pastor. I just wanted to thank you. I've served on this board for about a year and a half now, or a little over a year, excuse me. We have been working very diligently to draft this policy and guidelines that you'll see soon. that really seek to move our transportation infrastructure priorities more in line with promoting all modes of transportation, not just vehicular. That includes pedestrians, bikes, and transit. And I just wanted to voice my support here and also let you know as the board and staff of the council as well that board members and city staff that we've been working with are here to answer any questions or to meet with you privately to let you know what we've been working on and how we can promote the policies that we've been working on. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Jack Davis?
Good morning, Madam Chair and council members. I'm here in support of the Complete Streets Advisory Board submittal. I believe that we have diligently worked this process through. It has taken 1.5 years of everyone's concentrated efforts, and this has been challenging. Obviously, when Mark refers back to we've had to take it out and bring it back in because we had to bring in other interested parties. Some of them may or may not still agree with what we have presented, but I think it is in the best interest of the city to move forward with this policy, and we will bring you the guidelines shortly after. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Haley Ritter?
Good morning, Madam Chair and all the members of the council. I'm very excited about this plan, and as you know, I'm an avid cyclist. I bike everywhere, and I live in the Westwood community at 4422 North 22nd Drive. There are many, this is a big city, and I understand the urgency of a lot of streets in a lot of neighborhoods because I ride my bike on all of them. So I just want to say thank you for putting this all together and also for continuing with efforts with the bicycle master plan that was put into effect a couple years ago. I'm not sure how the progress of that is coming along. I need to get in touch with Joe Perez about that, but I just wanted to say thank you for all that. And let's see, 23rd Avenue between Indian School and Camelback and Turney between 19th and 23rd are two streets that could use a lot of TLC, and they've actually fixed up a lot of Turney, and I really appreciate that. So I just want to say thank you to all of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. CJ Hager?
Good morning, everyone. My name is CJ Eisenbarth Hager, and I'm with Vitalist Health Foundation. And we've been part of the Complete Streets effort for many years, not quite as long as Councilwoman Gallego, but soon thereafter, because we believe that how we design and build our cities impacts our health. It impacts our choices that we make. And the streets are a very important part of creating health in a community. So creating choices by expanding public transportation options, bike options, pedestrian options will all, in the end, benefit our health. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Nicole Olmsted, did you want to speak? Okay.
Good morning. I'm Nicole Olmsted. I'm with the American Heart Association. We actually are right on the border of Phoenix and Tucson. That's where our offices are located. And we've been attending and contributing to the Complete Streets Advisory Board for the past almost year and a half. We are supportive of the policy. We know that increasing active modes of transportation decreases chronic disease and obesity. And we also know that active modes of transportation are key for those populations who depend on them to get to work, care, and food. So we urge you to support it.
Thank you very much. That's all the cards we have. Do we have any comments, questions? Councilwoman?
Thank you for the update. This is, I think, a very important program for our city. It's been wonderful to see how often when we apply for grants or federal funding, we mention the Complete Streets policy. Some of those grants really want us to have the guidelines done, but just having the policy, I think, has made us more competitive for many of the programs and added funding. So that's, I think, a real strategic advantage for our city. One of the charges that we gave to the committee was to help us with project prioritization. And given how much is happening right now in transportation, I think that mission is becoming probably even more important. The Citizens Commission on Transportation has such a broad mission, and if you look at their meetings, they're so dense. So looking at individual projects probably isn't something that they can do, at least on some of the smaller streets in this way. Could you give us an update on that work?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Gallego, as an example, this past week we had our Complete Streets Advisory Board meeting. Staff provided a draft plan for our 43rd Avenue to 19th Avenue in Missouri project. And it's a striping plan, and it also it focuses on bike, but there are some pet improvements also. But as an example, and we're trying to do this more and more, we laid out the plans, we talked, we got the feedback from the board on what they feel would be some added elements to make it more effective. And so we're going to be doing that more and more. We're also going to be bringing lists of projects also to get their feedback on how we move ahead.
Wonderful. And you had mentioned on the guidelines that the Planning Commission had asked you to wait until we had all stakeholders on board. That seems like a little bit of a high bar for, we might not be moving forward if we waited until everyone agreed.
No, their only comment was, thank you for going back to the stakeholders and getting their input. They voted unanimously on the policy, but they stated though that they would like to have continuing input from the development community as part of our process, our design guidelines, as well as potential code changes.
I think one thing we've talked about at this body before on potential code changes is we're not the first to do this, and other cities have been implementing it, some significantly longer than we, and it would be good to learn from real examples, because we are getting feedback from some people who say, I mean, there's just a big gradient of opinions, and I think when we can be informed by facts and where were policies that really delivered results but were cost effective, we certainly don't want policies that will stop development, but I think this needs to be a meaningful policy where it does really drive change and drive the kind of streets that we want, that supports the amazing investments we're making in transit, in walkability, we have ambitious goals for tree and shade master plan that we need to support as well, and we really need to get those guidelines and code changes and be able to move forward on that.
We do have one more card, Greta Rogers.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. My name is Greta Rogers. With regard to the streets policy, if we don't have, we need to have a 5-year plan that is realistic and able to be followed and completed unless we fall into another depression, which at this time does not look likely in the near future in this country, unless the man at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue continues to raise havoc from the White House. I don't think that'll last very much longer, thank God. But we need to have a 5-year plan that we can follow based upon actual, measurable, judgmental needs by the Director of Streets and his most qualified engineers. And you need to put this in the budget for 5 years, realistically, and no surprises. This is something that the city has been very remiss about. the maintenance and care of our infrastructure. We think we're a big city. Population-wise, we are. Developmentally, we're nothing but a big, small, erratic town. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience on this. And I want to thank members of the committee especially. They have really committed themselves. Spending a year and a half to come up with this is quite an accomplishment. And I know I've thrown out some challenges because some areas I absolutely can visualize it, and then I have some areas in my district that we've talked about that they were built wrong, in my opinion. When you build them in a walled community and for a mile there's a wall, doesn't make a lot of sense to me to have a bus stop in the middle and a tree here and a tree there. I mean, so I hope what I guess I'm saying is that we work very close with the planning department so they understand what this proposal is, because I think it benefits the city as a whole. I think it's very important that it is a walkable area, that we don't create a mile of block wall for somebody to walk down the street to try to get to a shopping center or something, that it makes it more accessible for people. I think you have really taken in all the components that we've all talked about. Granted, you have had to tussle with a couple of the items, but I congratulate you for coming to a consensus and getting this approved. Working with the other agencies, the home builders, other people involved in the development community, I think was essential. If we want this to be successful, we have to include everybody that has a part in it. So thank you for all your hard work you've done on this. Any other comments or a motion?
I will move to approve the Complete Streets Plan. Secondly, I think we also have to work very closely with CED and understanding what is the complete streets and what we're looking for. I mean, obviously all departments, but planning and CED is crucial. So I move for approval.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second, and along with that, and I know you're doing this, but CED, planning, health and human services, all of it is connected. Our health, giving people an opportunity to get out and walk or be multimodal, ride a bike, and all of it comes back. It actually benefits the economy as well, our economy. And, again, any world-class city must continue to invest in infrastructure and education. There are a lot of people who are attracted to our infrastructure and our culture around it. And for that, I want to thank you, Chair, Councilwoman Williams, but all of our predecessors who continue to move in that direction. That's my very long second on that motion.
If I could add something, we've discussed the stakeholders from the development community and the health community. We also have had input from green infrastructure, and with that, we would, in certain instances, like to include those in our guidelines, but understand that we have very little of this in the city, and it would actually act as a pilot in certain instances, but we would like to move that ahead also. So OEP, as also Office of Environmental Programs, has also been key in these efforts too.
I think we're moving forward with a green infrastructure partnership with the Nature Conservancy, which could be very helpful in this as well. It's a great comment. Thank you for adding that.
Any further comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again.
Thank you.
That takes us to item 17, transit safety and security improvements.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, this is an important item, and I know a high priority for all members of the subcommittee. All of you have been working with your community and within your district to ensure that light rail security is a high priority. We consistently hear from members of the community their concerns about security and safety on transit. I know that staff has been in attendance at community meetings with many of you to discuss this very subject. And it's very important that people not only are safe on our transit bus and light rail, but also that they feel safe and that they perceive that it's a safe system to be on, and in addition to the people that live around the transit line. And so these are areas that we're trying to address. The Citizens Transportation Commission has had several discussions about this as well, and is looking to help address this. They have put forward this recommendation to the subcommittee today. And so Maria Hyatt, Public Transit Director, along with Commander Brad Burt from the Police Department, and Albert Santana, our High Capacity Director, are here to present to you the proposal and take any questions. Maria?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I wish I could say that I'd had the foresight, but I did not. When Transit 2000 was put together, the really bright people, I think including our city manager, decided that since we were adding such an important element to our transit, which was light rail at that time, in addition to the additional bus service, that we needed to work with the police department in creating a transit enforcement unit. It was called a different name at that point in time, but we have a long commitment in transit in making sure that we address safety and security on the system. And we do that in partnership with the police department. So at first it started with a police commander who really helped us put together our plan, our safety and security plan for light rail as well as on the bus side. And we've certainly continued that with our Transportation 2050. So not only are we continuing the plan, but we have recognized that with the expansion of the system, we also need to grow our safety and security during that time. Commander Burt will talk about how we are currently staffed and what's proposed.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. What I'm going to talk about today is just currently how we're staffed and what we've done just recently to augment our numbers, and then we're hoping to increase ultimately with consultation with transit. And if I can go ahead and get started. Where we're currently staffed is at 16 officers for 2 shifts, and that's 7 days a week. Essentially what that comes out to is 4 officers per shift. They're augmented by 5 police assistants per shift as well. What that does for us essentially is give us enough staffing to respond to calls for service, respond for investigations, at least the initial investigation. And of course, we're not just responsible for the light rail. We're also responsible for bus as well. So we are strictly responsive at this point. There's not much in the way of proactive enforcement methods for us that are available. What we do is rely upon the other precincts to help us with that. Now, they have resource lieutenants and CAOs and whatnot to help us with that. But essentially, we cannot, at least from our perspective, go out and look for things, look for criminal behavior to stop it before it takes place. So what we did is we, based on a pilot program we ran in early 2016, we started a extra duty program which involved 4 officers, and they were assigned 5 days a week, 6 hours a day, and it was all based on data-driven results we were getting from our crime analysis unit. Plus, community concerns were important as well. So what we did is we, over the course of the last 2 months, ran that program. 4 officers were able to be proactive, to get out there on the platforms, to assist private security on the light rail, and be visible. And plus, pull in some results as far as arrests and some interdictions. And we're also looking for consensual contacts, positive contacts between the public and police. So that program's been running for 2 months. But again, we're not very flexible with it because it's focused on the 19th Avenue corridor. And of course, it's limited because right now it's being run by our TEU, our Transit Enforcement Unit. So we'd like to expand it and give us the opportunity to reach out to other officers who want to assist with the program and give us a little more flexibility to be able to help out the airport, the east side area, not just 19th Avenue, and be a little bit more proactive as far as our helping the neighborhoods themselves, because they just don't focus on the light rail. They don't focus on the bus. There's a community that is a part of that light rail system. So they see things that occur around that light rail, and they need to be able to act upon it. So ultimately, what we're looking for is to be able to augment what we're doing now, and therefore give us a little bit more effect. So Do you want to move on to the bikes?
Okay.
We will move on to
Yes, one of
the budget.
Okay.
All right, but we'll also talk about bikes. So as I mentioned, the Transportation 2050 program funds safety and security, both on the police department side as well as Valley Metro side. So for Transit Enforcement Unit, Public Transit Department funds the officers and police assistants and municipal security guards that Commander Burt mentioned previously, and that totals $7.5 million. For the Valley Metro private security, the Phoenix portion of that cost is $3.3 million. So we pay Valley Metro $3.3 million towards that private security that they provide on the train and on the platforms. So when we were putting together the Transportation 2050 plan, one of the things that we did obviously was continue our commitment to the police department and making sure. So we continued the elements that were in our safety and security plan pre-Transportation 2050. But we also knew that as we expanded and as time went on, we would identify alternative or different things that needed to be addressed. Technology, additional police officers when we have expansion, different needs at points in time like we have potentially on 19th Avenue or at the airport or other areas. And so we believe that having $2 million every year to the Transportation 2050 plan would help us address those needs. So for the fiscal year 17-18 budget, we have identified the following. So out of that $2 million, 1.1 million of that is going towards private security. And that is because we've enhanced we have longer bus hours. We have more frequency. So we have people going to transit centers and bus stops longer hours. And so we knew we needed private security to be able to address that. We also knew we needed to continue to fund Valley Metro's crime suppression efforts. And again, that's through Transit Enforcement Unit, but it's really managed with the focus solely on light rail and solely on 19th Avenue. We're continuing that program at $260,000. And then Commander Burt, do you want to talk about the bikes?
Sure, moving to the bikes. Keep in mind everything that was already discussed about what we're trying to do to augment our efforts. The bicycles are just another tool to help us be able to be a little bit community-oriented when it comes to being able to get into the community on the bikes. The Tahoe's great equipment, vehicle, but they're just not as mobile as we would like to be, especially between the platforms, around the platforms, into the neighborhood, into the park and rides. They give us a community feel as well. It kind of forces us into a position where we have to interact face to face. We're not sitting behind steel and windows. So I like it from a management standpoint because it gets my officers out there. So, and there's several studies that indicates that there is a community affection for that kind of enforcement. So we're looking for the addition of at least 16 bikes for all of my sworn personnel, provided they can pass the testing. But, that's the bicycle portion. I think we addressed the extra duty officers. I think we're looking for extra. Right now we're working on 4 officers currently. We want to augment that and double that at a total of 8 is what the funding will support.
So in summary, I wanted to mention that our public transit's commitment to safety and security currently is about 5.5% of our total budget goes towards safety and security. And that will fluctuate depending on our needs, but that maintains our strong commitment. The following is our recommendation, and it is a long one, so I will let you read that versus going through all of that, but we are here to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? I do have some cards if you want. Take the cards first. Reed Butler.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Mayor, members of the committee. So we live at 42 West Mariposa Street. I think a lot of you know that, my wife and I. We have a modern family, so our kids have lived there from time to time, and our grandkids have lived there from time to time. But we are, and I've made this comment before in various hearings, I think we live closest to the light rail station than maybe anybody in the system, or maybe just a handful of people. And the reason I wanted to step up was to recognize the police department. So we've had events there from time to time, not frequently, but from time to time. And whenever we have an event, the community action officers are right there. We've seen the bicycles, Commander, so we greatly appreciate that. In addition, Albert Santana has always been available when we complain, right, Albert?
Always.
And our complaints are not short complaints often. But I'm being tongue-in-cheek on that. Again, we like living urban. We like living next to the train station. But the presence of the PD for our family and for our neighbors has been amazing. Really nothing short of amazing. So thank you to the commander and the PD and Albert and the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Diane Barker?
Good morning. Thank you, Chairwoman Williams and Transportation Infrastructure Subcommittee. I was just thinking, okay, my family has been in the Valley of the Sun for half a century, and I have loved this country, and I'm 13th generation American. So what I'm going to say, I'm making only a statement, which is really sound after being a passenger here in the Valley for over 3 decades, being multimodal, using transportation, and having my motor carrier license and being a bus driver, that safety is number one. And I am not saying I'm all for this particular one, because I want to read the qualifications of the safety officer. I need to be a little more educated. I would like to see the system empower the citizenry to be proactive against negative behavior around transit. It's got to start right at the beginning, even from the disregard, something that is maybe you think is not that important, like litter, but it is, because it's attitude, it's disregard for the area. And I know that we have different people that ride transit. When they see negative, they ask nicely to stop it, and there's opposition, but you need the backup of these officers, and it starts with the bus driver. Bus, number one, safety, but I have seen bus drivers go beyond that. Most of them are friendly too, but some of them are enforcers, and when they see it, they warn, and they'll say, this bus isn't going to go anyplace, over and you're out. And I've seen them enforce, so that's what I'm saying. It goes on beyond hiring all these people, because I've seen some of the officers, they're ticketing, checking tickets, and then I've asked, you know, even for a little information, if they would know the system. They go, no, I just learned how to kick people off. Let's see if some of these officers have used transit before they're even hired. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Members of the committee, do you have any comments, questions? Councilwoman?
Thank you. Very important issue. We want to make sure we have a great, safe system and make these investments. Can you talk about why we are making the recommendation for officers as opposed to police assistants?
Madam Chair, Councilman, or Councilwoman Eagles. Primarily sworn personnel, they have a broader scope and capabilities and ability to be able to arrest, contact, legalities attached to what police officers can do versus our police assistants. Now, that would be, of course, what we'd like to see, but what we've done in the past, and it's a great question, we have actually used police assistants to help us as part of that augmentation force. Now, I've said 4, we're utilizing now. We'd like to ask for additional 4. I'll tell you, during the time that we've had that program implemented, we have used police assistants. It's based on the mission, so to speak. If we're out there maybe working plain clothes, police assistants are great spotters for us. They can help us with processing prisoners, and positive contacts. You know, there's a training aspect to making sure that we come across professional and helpful, knowing about the system, as was mentioned. So the police assistants certainly do have a spot in that program. Primarily, we're looking at the greatest cost will be using officers, and they give us the biggest bang as far as trying to impact crime. from a proactive standpoint. Police assistance logistically can help us. They certainly can be a part of that process and can be a great addition to that program.
I always think back, I was at a stand down where we were working with homeless veterans, and the courts were dealing with the fact that there were several homeless individuals who had been arrested over and over again on our transit system. And what we ended up doing was some of them, we gave them community service instead of fines because they couldn't pay it. But it didn't feel, I mean, they were arrested over and over again. And so I don't know that that is a solution. When what I hear from my residents is they want more visibility, they want to see more people in uniform. Some of them even like seeing the fare inspectors because they just like to see professional staff in uniform and they want to see us more often. So I'm wondering if we wouldn't get more bang for our buck actually with more people. And that arrest is not weird. I don't see how we're going to arrest our way out of this problem. So I guess I would love us to look maybe more at police assistance. And then I've also gotten questions about just capital investments in security equipment. Could we have more cameras, more monitoring? If we have one person looking at 10 cameras, can we see problems sooner and really support the work that the police department is doing, making it more effective in identifying where the problem areas are and deploying resources? So have we looked at capital investments beyond bicycles as part of this recommendation? And could you take us through what are the capital investments already along the light rail for security?
I can take Chair Williams, Councilwoman Gallego. So again, as Maria had mentioned, there's kind of a multi-layered effort. So some of the capital investments that we do is a part of the operations agreement that we have with Valley Metro. So do know that each train is equipped with multiple cameras, as well as we have capital investments in the cameras that are also located at every one of the platforms. And one of the most recent things is working with Valley Metro on upgrades to their cameras as far as facial recognition and having that technology, which helps actually support the police department's investigation when we do have situations that are needed to do deeper investigations. And so those are some of the capital investments in partnership with Valley Metro. And to your point about presence, because we do have situations where we have actual things that are happening, which can also affect some of perceptions around the system as well. So we have been working closely with the director over safety at Valley Metro, which is a former lieutenant in the police department, Adrian Ruiz. And what we've asked for them to do is put a proposal in front of at least Phoenix, and then also Tempe and Mesa seem to be very supportive as far as how they can go about increasing the amount of presence that they have through their private security officers, because to your point, from a cost-effective standpoint, they really are, from a cost perspective, more cost-effective as far as presence-wise. And so Valley Metro is going through that assessment, and we'll soon be presenting to all the cities through our board as far as what it would take to have more increased presence. In fact, they've already started to increase a lot of the presence of their fare inspectors. So we are working kind of in a multi-effort, to your point, to try to have much more of a presence so people see people in a uniform, as well as being able to work with the police department as far as having enough officers. So in the situation when we have civilian uniform private security, that we do have a quick, efficient response from the police department. So you've got multiple things going on. It is a very fluid conversation, just because as the system grows and as we have so many, we have millions of boardings, and then we're going to be expanding the system. I do think that I can say, and I think the commander and his team can say, that the relationship between the Valley Metro director and their staff there and our police departments in Phoenix, Tempe, and then in Mesa, they have daily communication. So there's lots of different layers as to the efforts around how we can have a presence and then have the support when needed from the respective police departments.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Gallego, I think Albert hinted at this, but we do have, Valley Metro has cameras on every one of the platforms. They are monitored 24/7 over at their Operations and Control Center. So they do have staff who are monitoring and looking at those cameras. But Councilwoman, we can certainly check to see if they feel like they have adequate coverage, whether, like you mentioned, 10 cameras is too much to be able to be proactive. We can certainly work with them on that. Inside the vehicles, both in the trains as well as all of our buses, we have cameras in there also. And so police department is able to pull those videos and be able to proactively see what happens there.
I want to thank you and make a comment that Valley Metro, this is a hot topic almost every single meeting on improving security. If we are going to have a good rail system. People have to feel safe when they're riding it. And I probably hear more about that than anything else. But I know as a board member, we have already approved beefing up the private security by quite a substantial amount. And it's an ongoing, but I think what we're really looking for is better technology to help the police officers so that they know when it's a repeat offender. They can often intercede before an incident happens, so an arrest doesn't have to be made. Get services out there to help that person change a life, perhaps. But I think this is very important. I am fully supportive of this. I think the bikes are a great idea, even though I like to hassle you about the bicycles. I see how mobility really adds to not only how you can speed up the process, but I think the customer friendly, letting people know, the awareness, seeing an officer on a bike gives you a comfort level. And I hadn't thought about the park and rides, but I'm sure that's very important to start at the beginning and follow through the process. So, and I love the dogs. We all know that when the dog gets on the train, people jump off for some reason. Can't imagine why, but it's very effective. So I think you've put together a great plan, and I will be supportive. Did you have a?
I have plenty of questions.
Okay.
Because majority and along with Councilwoman Gallego's line is a lot of the hot spots. And so let's get clear on that. We have hot spots on the light rail. And I have several questions. My first question is, explain the difference between a police officer and a private security. What are the difference between having private security and actually police present on a line or around a platform?
Madam Chair, Vice Mayor Pastor, quickly, our private security is in the belly of the train. You know, they're the ones that take care of the fare inspections. And the rules that describe basically conduct on the train. And we support everything on the outside, on the platforms. Now, the difference is that we, on occasion, ride the train as part of a proactive program to help not only the internal security, but it also gives the sworn personnel an ability not only just to deal with the rules of the train and back up private security, but we also can take action on any violations of Title 13 or any city ordinances. So the difference is, at this point, at least basically on a day-to-day basis, is private security takes care of the interior of the train. They're also out on the platforms providing enforcement based on what they can do on civil violations, where officers, again, can help and support private security, not only on the trains but on the platforms, but they also can take action on issues that occur on view Title 13 offenses. Now, of course, we always respond to any issues that private security has on the train. On the platforms, when it comes to crime, we're there to help and back them up. We're also there just to support them while they do their job. It's a little difficult being a security officer on the train without really a support from the police department. So sworn personnel obviously have greater powers of arrest, capabilities as far as logistics, transportation, prisoners, and reporting mechanisms, so we can report directly into our system, whatever the crime was or whatever the issue was, where private security doesn't quite have that. They're really the eyes and ears of security, if that makes sense.
No, it does, and I think we need to get clear on all the differences between private security and police officers, and the authority private security has and doesn't have. The second question is, what's the difference between police assistance and private security? What authorities does police assistance have?
Well, the way we utilize police assistance, maybe I can speak to that, because there is a greater possibility for the use of civilians in our law enforcement. I think Chief Williams has made it clear that she'd like to visit that. But how we use them is logistical support. And they help us secure prisoners. They help us with, they have the ability to be able to run CJIS checks on individuals. They help provide security on the platforms when we're not there. I mean, again, we only have 4 folks. And that's fully staffed because people take days off, so I could potentially have 2 officers taking care of the whole city without this augmentation process that we're talking about. So ultimately, they are a force multiplier when it comes to eyes and ears. At the same time, they have a direct connect with us and with the transit as far as being able to regulate the speed of the train, stop the trains in case we need that for public safety reasons. So they just help us do our job in various aspects. And they are, again, they check CJIS checks for us, they secure prisoners for us. They're able to actually take accidents, investigations, so to speak, involving the light rail, and where my officers don't have to do that. So they're just a force multiplier for us as we use them.
Yeah, so they assist you as, say there's an incident, they can come in, you secure the incident, they can come in and then move, and police officers can still stay on the ground. At
Correct.
least that's how I'm interpreting it.
Right.
My other question is, what I am hearing, and I've heard this like just, and I'm gonna repeat kind of what I heard. I heard we need more. We're getting more, but we need more. So my question to staff is, there's $2 million, and we are providing only $600,000 to this proactive measure that we know that works. My question is, why are we putting $1.1 million into private security when we know these proactive measures work on our line? And in all reality, for Phoenix, I'd like Tempe and Mesa to do their fair share, but for Phoenix, and how long is the leg of Phoenix, and we're going to expand, is that people feel secure on the line at whatever platform they get on, and that there will be security or some type of person that if something happens within one of the platforms or the legs, they can get off and find somebody to report something. I have had several incidents within the last month that people have told me personally what has happened to them on the platform and have not been able to get to somewhere to be able to report what is happening. And it's happening within that, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and it's very confrontational. And there's nowhere to go or push a button to say, hey, we need help. When it goes back to security cameras and monitoring, if people are monitoring the cameras, they should be able to see the incident at that moment as it's happening and be able to get on a phone and say, this is what's happening on platform whatever, and somebody should get there. Does that happen?
Chair Williams, Vice Mayor Pastor, the cameras are monitored actually at Valley Metro's operation maintenance facility around 48th Street, just south of Washington. So they do have cameras and screens. It's almost like the size of the screen behind you all that has an actual camera of our screen of each platform, all 35 platforms, as well as the vehicles. And 24/7, those are being monitored live by staff and personnel there. And they do have direct communication upon incidents. And so one thing that to piggyback off the commander's comments is that in those situations, obviously, again, safety, security are top priority, and customers having safe experiences is a priority, top priority. And so those get dispatched, and from my knowledge, it's the closest officer would respond. So in a lot of the cases, in the majority of cases, it's typically a precinct officer because, as the commander explained, there are limited amounts of officers that are specific to TEU. But one thing that we do want to make sure is clear is that when those calls from the control center say that something's happening, for example, at 19th Avenue in Camelback, we've got a situation that's seen by one of the staff that's monitoring a video screen, that once that call goes out, it's not to be misunderstood that it's waiting for one of those 4 TEU officers to respond, but its closest officer would respond to that call. So, for example, if somebody from a precinct responded there, they would be able to help control the situation. And then upon TEU arriving to the situation, then if the situation is okay, TEU would then be able to relieve that precinct officer, then they'd go back. But we do want to make sure that's something we get asked a lot in the public and a lot along between 7th Avenue Camelback up to 19th and Camelback, is that it is always closest officer responds based on what the call is. It's not something where we're waiting for these handful of officers to then get there, because that obviously would not be acceptable or efficient. So there are multiple groups that are working on that, but they are monitored though.
My question is, if somebody sees an incident on the camera, do they have the ability at that moment to say something is happening on this platform?
Yes.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, that's.
My other point is, there's intimidation that happens on the line in, say, a cabin, I don't know what to call it, the train. And what I mean by intimidation is there could be a group being really loud, obnoxious, and then there could be another group, a family, and a father who is a police officer was on this train, and the group was being very obnoxious, saying very rude comments with a 7-year-old around. And he said he felt for his safety at that moment, knowing that he was an officer, that he did feel for his safety. And my point is, a camera can't catch that. And he indicated that he had nowhere to go within that train, and nowhere to call, nowhere to where to push a button to call the train operator to say, hey, this is happening. He had to wait those 3 or 4 or 5 minutes in order to get off, and he got off just so that he didn't have to take the next train. He waited for the next train. So these are items or incidents that happen within this line that need to be secured. And I understand that it's cost effective to have private security, but I would like to relook at the whole, at least for Phoenix, I would like to relook at our the way we secure our line. And I guess that would be a very bigger question at Valley Metro, but on how we provide safety within our line, within our city.
I think part of the problem is if we have a shortage of police officers. We could assign a lot more officers if we had more officers. But I think patrol has been the council and the chief's priority in life, and they are coping as best they can. Valley Metro is doing its best to do the private because it doesn't have authority over any police agency. I know the Mesa and Tempe are very involved and work very closely with our officers, their officers, as well as the onboard security. I think you're going to see more as it's modernized. The Wi-Fi is coming soon. That gives people more communication in case they're frightened. I don't think there's an easy solution. It's kind of growing pains as we get further. We learn more what to do and what not to do. So I hope I give you somewhat comfort that it's a high priority for everybody.
No, and you do give me high comfort. The issue, I think, really is ridership. We want to increase ridership and we want to expand. We need to make sure that it's safe, that people feel comfortable on the line and feel safe. And that's the economic development that we create. So these are just, I'm telling you stories of what the constituents tell me.
No, and I understand totally, and I hear horror stories too.
Yeah.
So, Councilwoman?
I think the fact that we have a need for more officers on patrol means we ought to be diligent about looking at, is there technology that can enhance what we're doing? So I was in the Bay Area writing the BART system recently, and they have the ability, you can text if you have something. So there was an individual who had a sign indicating that he was homeless and in need of funds. And you could text, and then someone went on the intercom and reminded the people in the car that you were not allowed to solicit funds on the BART system, and the individual exited. So we didn't need to deploy an officer. It solved the problem. One individual looking at cameras could probably deploy or use the intercom and really be a force multiplier, and that way our officers can be focused on things only officers can do. Because really I think we want people to feel safe, we want them to feel like there's security system. If we can't have people in uniforms in the cars, at least that presence and people to know that we are paying attention. And a lot of it is sort of nuisance crimes and that I hear about. And so the more we can use technology as a force multiplier, the better. And so I don't know, I've not had that experience on our system, and I don't know if we have the ability, if you see something happening on a platform.
Madam
Can
Chair,
you?
Councilwoman Gallego, on every platform, there is a call box in addition to the cameras. And in the trains, there's a red button near each one of the doors where you can press. Although we have heard from people who have said that they feel like they're on the spotlight when they go hit either one of those buttons.
Text something?
So Valley Metro is currently working on that as part of their new mobile app. And so hopefully, I can't even give a date, but maybe towards the end of the calendar year, that's one of the planned elements, is to be able to text or even take a picture with your phone surreptitiously if you feel like it, and then send it over to Valley Metro, who would then triage and work with private security as well as transit enforcement unit or precincts to be able to address those issues, as well as, like you said, Councilwoman, with the operator being able to maybe say something over the intercom that would address everything. So we're working on that, and we're excited by that opportunity. And as soon as we have more information on when and what that will look like, we'd be happy to come back and talk about that further with Valley Metro.
That'll be wonderful improvements. And I mean, there are many situations where you might feel a little uncomfortable, but to me, when you push the button, you might need immediate assistance, and just having the ability to text and share information. And then also might allow us to deploy resources better so that you can actually get help for the individual who is experiencing homelessness, and try to, again, move towards long-term solutions and not just arresting the same people over and over again, which I've not seen evidence leads to a positive outcome for the riders or the individual.
We do have one more card, Haley. Did you want to speak?
I just want to briefly say I use this train almost every day, and I've noticed an increase in the private security, and I really appreciate it. It's a nice gesture. They're very friendly, at least to me. I don't know. We chat, and it's a nice service, and I feel like it's a very supportive service. So I want to thank you for that. And then also, I've had people push a button when I've had a grand mal seizure on the train, and the paramedics show up right away. I've told them I don't need to go to a hospital. I'm okay, but it's a liability if they don't take me, and I've had to pay a lot of money to deal with that. So that's been a little bit uncomfortable, but the red buttons on the trains are very effective. They typically work. I've seen other people use them, and the station platforms though don't have a lot of that type of electronic connection, it seems. I know the cameras are there, and I appreciate that, but those electronic call boxes that are kind of on the platform seem to be more decorative than functional. I'm not really sure how they work. I've never tried them. I've never seen anyone use them, but the private security increase has helped a lot, I think, in the recent month or so that I've noticed. So I just wanted to say thank you, and that's it.
Thank you very much. Did you want to make any comment? No. Okay. Do I have a motion?
I have a motion to move the
Recommendation.
The recommendation.
Very long recommendation.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Is our lines or the light rail smart light rails? I mean, are they smart platforms?
Vice Mayor Pastor, can you give me a definition of what you mean by a smart platform so we answer correctly?
A smart platform, like having a smart city, is being able to use any technology, any device, and be able to move around within the city. It's technology.
Okay, Albert.
I'm sitting there. I don't know if we
Thank
could
you.
safely define a smart city, or a smart platform. I know people would have there's lots of things they're working towards, I can tell you that, and it would be good for us to be able to come back once we have these applications that they're working on moving towards that, including the Wi-Fi, et cetera, to give you all that update at that time.
I would say there are cities that have invested more in technology than we have, which I think is what you're getting at. And I was wondering, as you make the motion, if we could, staff recommendation specifically focuses on extra duty, but could we allow the department the flexibility to pursue police assistance if?
To what?
So it could be, if it turns out police assistance might be better than sworn officers, they have that flexibility to.
Commander Burke, that's because this came from you, so what?
Yes, that's part of the process as we speak now, and as we're working, we have PAs that are part of that process, and they're injected from time to time. But I would say that flexibility would be warranted.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for all your hard work, and we'll look for you to come back late fall and tell us what the upgrades are. We are to public comment. Diane Barker.
Thank you again, Chairwoman Williams and Transportation Subcommittee. I have been a transit rider in the Valley for over 3 decades. And I just want to let you know we're talking about safety that's close to your importance, mine, and my heart. I'm a big believer in transit, and the bus has gotten me out of some pretty scary situations. So I rely very much on transit because I know typically, more often, it is on time and I make it work. So I want to impart this to you. Figure this out. For 3 decades, I chose not to own a car. And so I've relied on using transit in years that you didn't have as much transit as you have. I've gone around the Valley in every single city and every area that I can think of, day and night, even on express buses. I don't carry any weapon, okay? So now I'm giving you this information, and I am still alive. I've done this mainly as a single woman. Now, that should impart, I believe, a confidence in you. I think, and I was sharing this with Rhett, is that a lot of this comes up through really family and parenting and the confidence that you give a child that you don't bother basically with strangers. Now, I like meeting strange people because they become a friend, but typically I have a mission to get from A to B, and this stuff that's going around that could distract me, or as a single female, it doesn't happen because I don't give it weight. And I think that we need to empower this. And being a bus driver for schools, I used to love to take the kids on field trips, and I've always loved that too. And in better times, and I'll be quick here, is that we had money to take people on field trips. Let's get the teachers out more with the kids using a bus and a light rail, the system, so they can learn it, they can become conscious of it, because believe me, the people that are my peers, they don't use transit, and they have pretty much tried to tell their kids they need to drive. That's not true. We can color outside of the box, be safe, and have fun.
Thank you. Greta Rogers.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. This speaks to future items.
Could you pull the mic down a little closer to you? There we go.
Can you hear now? Thank you. This speaks as a public comment to future consideration. And that is, I know that we had a property tax increase that we passed last year, the first one in probably 20 years of an increase. And I won't go into my thoughts on the lack of thinking and philosophy on that, but we need to have a review of property tax for adequacy in the coming 5 years. I don't know if it is or not. The percentage that we increased it last year, after almost 20 years of no increase, was 2%. That's what the COL increase has been estimated by the federal government to have been in the last 5 years. 2%, about 1.6 to 2% each year. So our 2% increase is not going to cover the waterfront by any means. Therefore, I would like you to consider on a future agenda item, whether it's this fall or next winter, I don't care. But we need to keep up to date on this so that we can provide the adequacy of income to the infrastructure of this city. Streets, lighting, and all of the exigencies that go into that. Instead of saying to streets and to all general fund departments, you're going to work with one hand tied behind your back. It's going to be your right hand, and since most people are right-handed, that puts an additional limiting burden upon the people in the departments who are in charge of planning and executing for their departments. This is ridiculous. The state is tighter than a tick on a dog's back in July. It doesn't follow that we have to be as mindless and stupid as the state of Arizona governing is. And it takes foresight and planning, and this takes an annual review and projection, and I would like this to be considered as a future agenda item. You represent the most important part of departments in this city. So meet your merit qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to future agenda items. Is there anything you want to see? This is our last meeting before the break, but coming up this fall, I know we already have several items, but if you would like to add something, if not, contact us over the summertime and we will try to accommodate. With that, we are adjourned.